So yesterday's game kicked off the NFL season between the Detroit Lions and Kansas City Chiefs, and it was definitely an interesting game. It was a back and forth, tough game. Ultimately, Detroit goes to Arrowhead and gets the upset 21-20 over the Chiefs. We scroll down to the stats. Look at, for the Lions, Goff went 22 of 35, 253, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, a 94.1 QBR. Of course, you had the two-headed backfield between Montgomery and Gibbs. Montgomery had 21 carries for 74 yards, 1 touchdown, and the rookie Jamar Gibbs had 7 carries, 42 yards, 0 touchdowns. We scroll down to receiving. Josh Reynolds was your leading receiver for the Lions at 4 receptions at 80 yards. Amonte Brown had 6 for 71 and 1 touchdown. Sam Laporta, the rookie, had 5 catches for 39 yards. And so far, and also again, the rookie Gibbs had 2 catches for 18 yards to add on top of the rushing. Marvin Jones had, I will say this, Marvin Jones had a rough game. I believe he did fumble at one point. And Marvin Jones, again, just targeted 6 times, only had 2 catches for 8 yards. We'll get to someone who did it worse than him, but ultimately he just did play bad. He was basically the Kadarius Toney for the Lions. Could not do too much in the game, but again, we'll get to someone who played worse really in this one. And then we move to the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes went 21 of 39, 226, two touchdowns, 1 interception, a 77.5 QBR rating. Mahomes was your leading rusher at 6 carries for 45 yards. Isaiah Pacheco at 8 for 23. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 6 for 22. Sky Moore had 1 for 4. Kadarius Toney had 1 for -1 yard. We'll get to that in a second. Talking about Kadarius Toney and Rashee Rice had 1 for -1 yard. Look at your leading receiver. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was your leading receiver for the Chiefs, 2 for 48. Justin Watson, 2 for 45. Noah Gray, who stepped in for the injured Travis Kelce, 3 for 31. Pachenko, 4 for 31. Rashee Rice, the rookie, I think he played well. 3 for 29 and a touchdown. Blake Bell, 2 for 12 and a touchdown. McKinnon, 1 for 10. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 1 for 7, and so forth and so forth. Sky Moore did not register a reception, which is crazy. He had 3 targets, did not get a reception, 0 yards, and so forth. 0 yards, 0 receptions. Kadarius Toney, probably the worst player of the game. And we'll talk to him about him in a second. But targeted 5 times, had only 1 catch for 1 yard. RIP to all the people who put him in fantasy like myself. I thought he was going to have a great game, and he had an all-time horrible performance. And then switching finally to the defense. I think, someone, it's not going to jump out too much on the stats, but Aiden Hutchinson was unbelievable. He was wreaking havoc on the Chiefs' offensive line. I don't see him on here registering anything too much. Brian Branch definitely was someone who really brought, definitely turned the tides in this game. Got the pick 6 off of Patrick Mahomes that really helped bring the game back to even. Unfortunately, it did seem like at one point he got hurt. Hopefully he is okay. Jack Campbell, the rookie as well, the first-round pick for the Lions, played well too. He had a great play right before the pick 6 where he kind of dove back and got the pass deflection. So definitely helped set up that play right there as well. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I heard his name a lot too. He was all over the field as well. Played well, played great signing for the Lions. Played well. And we look at the defense for the Chiefs. Without Chris Jones, who was attending the game, Justin Reed was your leading tackler at 6. If we go here, no sacks registered by the Chiefs whatsoever, and same thing too for the Lions as well. So again, it was a very tough game, very physical one. But Mike Donna was the only one who registered a sack in the entire game. Drew Tranquill played well. Willie Gray, Darius Sneed didn't do too bad. But overall, again, I think the defense didn't do too bad without Chris Jones. People weren't sure how the defense was going to play without him. Of course, him being really the only elite piece on the board left. Of course, a couple years ago, you had Tyrann Mathieu leave, which was another big piece that they lost in the secondary. So without Chris Jones, it was going to be interesting to see what they were able to do. And they definitely weren't as good as with him, obviously. But I think they did enough to win this game. They definitely had the pressure on the Lions offense. They were getting pressure on Goff, making good tackles, making good plays. So I don't think it's too much of an overreaction of saying like that. they're not horrible without him. Of course, would you love a guy to have that guy on your defensive line? Wreaking havoc on the offense? Obviously, yes. But I think when you're talking about the future of trying to figure out the contract extensions, and I think there was a report or rumor saying they're like $9 million apart for a contract. I think this gave you, again, it's only week 1, but I think this gave you kind of a glimpse of it's not the end of the world if you lose them. Obviously, is there a dent in there? Of course. I mean, over and over again. I'm not saying Chris Jones doesn't mean anything or, he's a useless player. Obviously, he's a big piece of this defense, and it's a massive loss if they decide to move off of him via trade or decide to let him walk. But I think, once again, it gave you a glimpse that the defense isn't in shambles without him. We'll see, of course, when the caliber team steps up even more from the Detroit Lions. But ultimately, I think this defense is good enough for the Chiefs. The bigger issue is the wide receivers. And I made a video on this, obviously, my Kelsey one. I said I think they have more than enough pieces to win this. Obviously, you saw last year, even though, of course, Kelsey wasn't on the field. For the most part, they've had these receivers. They're basically the same receiving group outside of really Rashee Rice, the big name that is on the team that was on there last year. I mean, you had Toney, you had Sky Moore, you had Scantling, you had, of course, Pachinko, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, McKinnon, and so forth, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, like I said, just said. So you have these familiar pieces, so it's not like you're going into this with a whole set new of cast. Of course, they are still new to the offense, only most of them being their second year into it, either rookie or second year into the offense. So yeah, it isn't the use of having the chemistry of a Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. But I thought at first this wasn't going to be a huge deal. They were going to take a step back in offense because you just don't have that all-time threat at tight end at Kelce who can just get open instantly. It doesn't seem like he's just unguardable at so many times. But I thought this was good enough for the Chiefs to win. And boy, was I wrong. The first one comes to mind, once I said, was like going back down the line for the stats. Sky Moore did not play well. He did not, 3 targets, did not register a single reception. You need more from that. He only had one, in terms of impact, he only had 1 rush for 4 yards early on. But you need more from that. You need more from your second round pick last year, who didn't play too much even last year too. He only really stepped up towards the tail end of the playoffs, the AFC Championship game, the Super Bowl. But for the most part in the regular season, didn't really do all too much in the season. And so far, not off a good start. Not by any means calling me a bust or horrible player, but just a little bit concerning. Again, it's only week 1, but it's a little bit concerning that he wasn't able to do more on this offense. He definitely has the speed, the shiftiness to really do some damage for this offense. And the other big one is Kadarius Toney, who played awful. He did. Again, I started him in fantasy. I really thought he was going to play well, especially with Travis Kelce being out. I would think that Kadarius Toney would probably be your go-to wide receiver 1. I know you still have Scantling, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, but I feel like Kadarius Toney would be just, I guess, somewhat of all the players you would think skill-wise, he's the best wide receiver, even though Scantling is a bigger receiver. I would have thought Kadarius Toney just be that number 1 option. I mean, maybe I'm just being a little delusional, but I thought maybe he could be the wide receiver 1, stepping up the next big-time playmaker outside of Travis Kelce, and he played awful. He was dropping every single pass thrown to him, especially the big one was right before the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. It was a 1st and 10. Patrick Mahomes throws a great pass down the middle of the field, and he drops it. And that's basically kind of what ends the drive. At some point, they get pushed to a 4th and 20 or 4th and 23. They fail to convert, obviously, and that basically ends the game. But it was a big drop like that really sealed the game and really just sums up his game. And even worse than that, too, now I get to the worst part of it, was the pick 6 where it was right in his hands. I think it was 14-7 in the game. And Mahomes throws a beautiful pass right in his hands, and it just goes right through him. And then Branch gets a deflection, picks it off, and runs it for a touchdown. And that just killed the momentum and put him back in the game when you could have drove down and go up at the very least 17-7. Again, if that was a score, I believe at that point, 17-7 or 21-7, where you really could put the pressure on the Lions to score. Because at that point, it was the Lions weren't doing too much on offense after the opening drive. Struggled a lot. They got stopped a lot on a defense without Chris Jones on it. So the defense was doing its job. And again, if you just go down and you score, it really puts the pressure on it. Maybe we were talking about a different game where the Chiefs win this one, but because of Kadarius Toney's just brick hands at that point and just bobbles the ball, Branch picks it up and scores it for a touchdown and puts all the momentum back to the Lions. And I'm believing that, yeah, we can win this. We can go to Arrowhead and win this, as opposed to kind of shutting the door early and, in this video talking about the Chiefs winning this one. But instead, Kadarius Toney was really the downfall for Mahomes. And outside of that, too, Rashee Rice, I think he was probably the best receiver out of all of them. Even though Scantling was your leading receiver, I thought Rashee Rice was probably the best receiver. He really showed flashes, got open, of course, scored one of the 2 touchdowns in the game for him. So I think they got a great receiver in Rice. I'm sure they're going to be using him more, even with Kelsey coming back in, just because of the wide receiving group. I think that they're going to use him more. I think that they're going to have to forced to, not by choice, but kind of have to. Scantling, we know who he is, a solid receiver, did his job. Again, if you look at the receiving stats, not too crazy. This kind of looks like a preseason game almost. When you look at the receiving stats, your leading receiver is only 48 yards, as opposed to you look at the Lions, 80 yards, 71 yards. But you look at for the Chiefs, it just looks like preseason stats. Not too much, only two catches for 48 yards, 2 catches for 45 yards. And going back to Toney too, Toney was tied for the most targets in the game. You go back, tied with Rashee Rice, the rookie, and Noah Gray, and didn't play well. So right off the bat, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney aren't playing well. And that's a big loss. Big investments, because you get a decent amount of capital to get Toney during the trade deadline last year, and use high capital in Sky Moore in the second round last draft as well. So far it's off to a disappointing start. I will put a tweet out on the screen right now quickly what I tweeted out, but it was basically just saying that even though it's only week 1, probably an overreaction, the receiving group looks horrible for Mahomes outside of Kelsey. Make no mistake, Patrick Mahomes did not fail in this game. He did everything he could. He made all the plays possible, made all the perfect throws he could. It's the receiving group failed him, and I think maybe it gives you a scary glimpse into the future of life without Travis Kelsey. I think they can, if they have Travis Kelsey and they don't have Chris Jones, they can survive that. Defense, I think, showed you they are good enough. They're not amazing, but good enough to survive with how this offense is. And then overall, through the span of the start of this, if you want to say dynasty, the defense hasn't been that spectacular, but they make plays when they have to, and they make stops when they need to. And I think they did it without Chris Jones. So I think that's too big of a loss if they decide to move off of him. But I think it's very scary of life without Travis Kelsey. Now they expect me, so they're optimistic about coming back next week, which I expected that, and I made a video in the Travis Kelsey update that it'd be smart for them to sit him out this year, or not this year, the home opener, get him rested for the next game, and ultimately that's what they did. Best decision they could have made. But it's very scary to see life without Travis Kelsey, because now it's forcing everybody to step up, as opposed to when Kelsey's on the field, all the focus is on Kelsey, the number 1 tight end in the NFL, and arguably the best tight end in history. People have to focus on him. They don't have to work, and then they kind of lose track of everyone else around them. But once you take that big piece away, someone has to step up. And unfortunately, in this game, with Lions defense, who wasn't too great last year, they couldn't take advantage of this. Now, of course, again, they had tons of pieces onto the defense, so they're much better than last year. But you expected these receivers to step up. And now you could say, well, they're still relatively new to the offense and so forth. Or they're young. Some people are rookies or in their second year. But ultimately, I think it's very lackluster for this offense. No one jumped out. No one really asserted command of being the number 1 wide receiver. I did give props to Rashee Rice. I think he played well. Arguably the best receiver that played for the Chiefs last night. But no one was dominant. No one was a Tyreek Hill, a Travis Kelsey that asserted himself and could constantly get open one-on-ones and give Mahomes the opportunity to throw to them. I think you just saw a bunch of above average receivers, unfortunately, out there. And again, Mahomes did as best of a job he could. It's the receivers. It's up to them. They have to make the catches. Sky Moore has to play better. Kadarius Toney has to play better. Even some of these guys have to step up even more. Scantling, Justin Watson, Justin Ross, who it was great to see coming back from potential career-ending injury back in Clemson in his college days. It was nice to see that he stepped on the field finally for his first NFL debut. So I don't want to put too much knock on him because of that, but there's going to have to be people that are going to have to step up and play well. I don't expect too much from Noah Gray and Blake Bell because of Kelsey probably being back next week or for week 2. But someone has to step up on this roster. Either that or they're going to have to go elsewhere and get someone. People are already saying, it seems like a big miss that they didn't go after Hopkins. Now, of course, that was more of a contract dispute as opposed to not wanting him. But I think another option maybe is Mike Williams. And I kind of put it's Mike Williams or bust maybe at this point, where you need to get someone who has been a wide receiver one, who has played in those big moments constantly and has come up every single time, or at least a good portion of the time. And I think it's definitely Mike Evans could fit this role. I don't know what's gonna cost you from Mike Evans, if it's a second round pick or even pushing a first round pick. I don't know if it's too ridiculous to say. I don't know what the asking price is for Mike Evans, but I think they need to get someone else there, a veteran presence that has the experience and has the capability of stepping up in these moments. Because if they're going to ride it out with these receivers, and you get to a point again where Travis Kelce gets hurt, and we're not talking about maybe week 1, but getting later down the stretch, late into the season, or maybe into the playoffs, it's very worrisome of knowing that you have this receiving core, because who's going to step up and do it? And for right now, again, it's probably an overreaction for week 1, but I was not impressed with the receiving group, especially for Toney and Sky Moore. More importantly, Kadarius Toney, who you expect to really step up, who has the physical tools to dominate, and just didn't play well. Now I expect him to bounce back in week 2, but I think there really needs to be a big change at wide receiver. Hopefully, either that for the Chiefs' perspective, either they go out and get someone, or they really hope these guys really take us, really grow up fast, and someone steps up in this, because it wasn't too great to see. Rushing, again, you don't want it. You don't want to see your quarterback being the leading rusher. You don't. I think they ran the ball a decent amount, which it made a little bit more than I've seen the Chiefs done. Again, I don't watch the Chiefs too much outside of the playoffs, obviously, but it seemed like they were a little bit committed to throwing the ball a little bit more at times. I thought for short yardage, it wasn't the best to run the ball for them, and I think just do play action, put it in Mahomes' hands, and let him make plays. Kind of having flashbacks to for my Bills for Josh Allen, always seeing him at times being the leading rusher. You don't want Mahomes to be the leading rusher. I'm not saying it's horrible if it happens every once in a while, but I for the Chiefs' perspective, I don't want to see this. Mahomes having to do everything. Isaiah Pacheco is a good running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I expect him to this be his final year. Need to play a little better. Maybe it goes back to the offensive line, or just a bad game, but I think they need to do a little bit better job, because I just don't think 8 rushes for 23 yards is good enough. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 6 carries for 26 yards is not good enough, and Jared McKinnon didn't get a rushing attempt. He only had 1 catch for two targets, 1 catch for 10 yards. It needs to be better. I think ultimately, it's once again, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. It's just week 1, and I know there's still tons of growth, tons of development, and tons of change that is going to happen between now, entering week 2 to week 18. I'm sure the Chiefs will turn it around. I'm sure they'll figure it out as usual. Just saying, for week 1, it was very disappointing. And also, too, just going back to the Lions, I just don't want to make this about Kansas City Chiefs. Give credit to Detroit. This is going to be a very tough team. They played well. Jared Goff played, I think, spectacular in this game. Going to Kansas City and going head-to-head with Mahomes, I think he's really proving himself more and more that he should be the franchise guy of this team. When going back to the Stafford trade, did not get off to a good start in Detroit in his first year. People were thinking maybe they should go elsewhere at quarterback. Last year he played well. I think they were top 5 in offense, or top 10 at the very least. And this game, I think he's really inserted himself that Sean McVay did not make him. That he is a good quarterback. He is worthy of that first overall pick back in 2016. I think he played well in this one. And you look at, and again, just looking at the numbers for rushing, it's vastly different. David Montgomery, 21 carries, 74 yards. Jamari Gibbs, 4 carries, 42 yards. Gibbs on his own almost is the leading rusher for the Chiefs. He's just a few yards behind Patrick Mahomes. And you look at between Mahomes and Pacheco, it's a decent amount of difference, as opposed to and it's a decent amount of difference between Montgomery and Gibbs. But you saw they were better at running the football. more committed to running to the football, I think. And I think they know that they have a great 1-2 combo early on, looking at Montgomery and Gibbs. Unfortunately, for fantasy owners, for Gibbs, it might be a little bit stressful because you don't know who's going to be the number one running back, and maybe there is a number one running back on this roster where there's going to be games like this where Montgomery is the leading rusher or Jamari Gibbs is the leading rusher. Because you look at the rush attempts, it is a huge difference from going from 21 rushes for Montgomery to 7 for Gibbs. So it's a big difference. I don't know if this is going to be the precedent going forward of Montgomery being the running back A and Gibbs being the running back B. I think it just kind of goes off of the game plan, the play style. I don't expect Montgomery to have a huge chunk of more of rushing attempts than Gibbs. I think it's just just trying to feel how these two are going to play. And also too, Gibbs did a little bit on the air as well. Hit 2 targets, 2 catches for 18 yards. So you're seeing flashes. I think they're just going to slowly ease him into it. And I think David Montgomery, too, when healthy, because he has, at times injury problems, is a great running back. And maybe this is a great insurance policy for Gibbs as well, where, knocking on wood, hopefully nothing happens to Montgomery. But if something did, Jamari Gibbs instantly comes in as the number one running back, and I think there's no drop off whatsoever. Gibbs is a very electric running back, great speed, great catching. So no doubt, I think this is a great 1-2 combo for Detroit. It's gonna be very difficult for the teams when they face Detroit to deal with a two-headed backfield, and the receivers as well. Especially Monte Brown, one of the best receivers in the NFL, played well once again. Josh Reynolds had a great game as well, 4 catches for 80 yards. Overall, and the defense too. Defense made plays, especially Aiden Hutchinson. He's a freak. He's a monster. He was terrorizing that Chiefs offense the entire time. Had Mahomes running constantly. And the other pieces too: Branch, Campbell, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and so forth. They have a lot of great pieces on this. It's going to be very exciting to see. The Lions, maybe it looks like they're going to really be pushing for being number one in the division. It's going to be fun to see. Hopefully, we get to see Detroit back in the playoffs. I think this would be the first time since 2017 they didn't make the playoffs. But I like this. I think Dan Campbell is really having this team play well, and they're going to be a force throughout the whole season. I'm not saying they're going to be challenging for the top 2 seeds in NFC, but definitely are going to be pushing for a playoff spot, and definitely will be, in my opinion, a playoff team this year. They're going to make it very difficult for teams to play. Just looking at, obviously, the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champs, coming close to the end, beating them by 1 point, 21-20, going to Arrowhead and doing that. So if they can do that there, they can take down anybody. But I'll wrap it up here. That's my NFL kickoff opener of Thursday Night Football between the Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't wait to see the full season starting on Sunday, how it's gonna play out. Once again, just wrapping up the NFL kickoff between the Lions and Chiefs. Let me know your thoughts down below on the game, your thoughts on it, who you think played well, who you think didn't. Obviously, we know Kadarius Toney was the worst player in this game, but let me know your thoughts down below on the game last night. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.